Man, oh man, that amps me up every time just seeing that promo video. Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. I am Blake Winkler, your host. Today, joined with me is Chris Walker from Advocate SEO. Chris, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Blake. Appreciate it, man.
So happy to have you here. I mean, we got a hot topic today. Just look at the name that, the fantastic, I'm sure you came up with it or in conjunction with our marketing team, stalking the Google algorithm, past, present, and predictions for the future. So I think we got a lot of great conversation points today. And just want to welcome as well our audience. Before I give a quick intro to Chris, just want to remind everybody out there joining us, you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and live on our website, all your favorite platforms. We try to bring all these great thought leadership and great conversations to you wherever you're at. So don't forget to hit that little subscribe button. So whenever we go live, that little bell icon down below, you get that push notification wherever you're at, and you can join these great and intriguing conversations that we have here at Liticast. So enough about Litify, enough about Liticast. Let's talk about Chris Walker, and he's the founder of Advocate SEO. Chris has been a student of organic search for more than a decade and a half. During this time, he's personally devoted more than 15,000 hours to SEO research. And let me just highlight that, 15,000 hours. Chris, you got some, you got a lot of, I don't want to say, I know you don't have a lot of time on your hands, but to be able to go to that lengths, I mean, we'll talk about that a little bit, but 15,000 hours of SEO research. This guy's just a pro. Testing and analysis, and his goal is to help clients compete at the highest levels of SEO and to further this objective that he's built and accumulated SEO knowledge into a powerful resource and SEO training specifically here for lawyers. So we got the right audience here. An audience I'm going to then, ask you guys, please ask questions. We got that little chat notification or that chat bar in the sidebar, wherever you're coming from us on whatever platform, please ask questions. I certainly have a few that I have ready for Chris today, but we want these questions to be coming from you guys. We want to ask them or answer them in real time, and that's really what we're here for too. So Chris, I think that's enough of an intro. I guess two more things really quickly. Your social handles. You can find Chris on LinkedIn. That's just your linkedin.com/in/Chris Walker SEO. Or you can find Chris on Twitter at Advocate SEO. So let's go ahead and jump right in, man. Again, thanks again for joining us today. Super excited to have you here. But can you just start off explaining at a high level the Google algorithm, right? We all, as consumers, if we're looking, specifically what we're going to be talking today, looking for attorneys, right? How does Google learn about, and rank specific content with this algorithm?
Well, it's just really, it's a mass collection of pages, and they're trying to decipher which pages to show at the top, right? And they're looking at, content, and they're looking at links, and they're looking at user metrics, and they're kind of mashing that all together. And then you see what you get on the front page typically, because not a lot of people, they say go to page 2 to bury a dead body. That's the SEO saying. But yeah, that's it, right? They're trying to give their users the best results possible. And that's obviously why their ads platform has been so successful, because they're doing it pretty darn well, I think.
Yeah, and for those that are, just joining this call or joining it late, we're talking about the Google algorithm, SEO in particular, search engine optimization. Chris just started us off by explaining what that algorithm is and how that when we make searches for specific things via Google, how does Google just know to give us those given results? So, when it comes to that search visibility, you talked about that, being on page 1 compared to being on page 3. What are the features that are important that determines that given visibility?
I like to use a simple acronym. So we use authority, relevance, and trust, right? Okay. So ART, pretty simple to remember, but that's it, right? Like Google's looking for the authority on a particular subject matter, right? And then obviously relevance, how much of this topic do you cover, right? And then trust, okay? So what sites off of your own site, who else trusts you on the web, right? Yeah, or do you have a Facebook profile? Do you have a Twitter profile or whatever else? And if it's outside of law, whatever, in another industry, whatever similar kind of references that other people in that industry have, you should probably have those as well. And that's what builds trust.
Trust is so important, especially, I mean, I know our law firms here today, they foundationally need to be built on trust with those client relationships that they have. Talk to me a little bit more about that. How can a law firm, maybe in particular, is it just having additional websites? Is it, posting relevant content? Is it all those things? Like, what are the things that actually Google looks at and says, hey, this is a trusted relationship or a trusted business, or go for it.
Yeah, a lot of that is, now more than ever, it's about that relevant content that you're putting on your website. And it's also it could be about having other websites as well that are relevant, right? It could be about being in resources online that people typically use. Maybe it's Nolo, maybe it's Avo, whatever it may be, right? If your competitors are there, you want to be there as well, because that's just a sign from Google that you're alive, right? That's a sign from Google that you're alive. Of
course. So, posting that relevant content, being all across the web, right? It sounds like those are great places where we can certainly start. So I think this is where, obviously those are the foundations or the building blocks, right? That art that you had just referenced there, Chris. So then, one thing that, that 15,000 hours of research that you've done over time, that algorithm changes throughout the year, right? There's different levers that are pulled.
Every day, man.
Yeah.
Every day.
So what are those things that the legal marketers here can do to stay on top of something like that?
That's tough because there's so much misinformation involved in that side of the house. And if you get a little too geeky, you can end up becoming an SEO yourself, which may not be a good plan for you. I don't know. If you're stuck, if you've already done the law degree thing, just go with it, right? But yeah, I mean, it's difficult to keep up on them, right? I mean, the most impactful, I'm trying to think of recent impactful algorithm changes, was probably the end of July 2019.
Sure.
The one that had probably the most impact on everybody, and it seemed like nobody could figure it out for months and months, and still today. Yeah. People today are finally starting to figure it out, but it's all about showing Google that you're the authority, right? You're going deep on a subject matter.
Interesting.
Right. And you're covering multiple aspects of that. And that is what they're looking for. And also, the interlinking and the hierarchy of that content that makes sense, right? Like if you have a core piece of content that you're referencing, that's the idea, right? I mean, sure. You have a core piece of content, and then you're writing to basically reiterate your points, sure. Right? But it's different angles, and then you're linking back internally to your pillar page or whatever you want to call it.
Right. So I guess two things that I have right out of the gate there from somebody who, I guess understands a bit about legal marketing, but nowhere to the extent that, you do. If I'm a legal marketer and I need to try to stay on top of those changes, is it something that I can realistically, is that something that I need to test on my own, or is that, public information where Google says, hey, we're changing our algorithm, these are the things that we want to focus on? How can people be aware of those changes?
Sometimes they do.
Sure.
And sometimes it's misinformation or disinformation, right? Sure. And so it's really difficult to say. Sometimes they have huge updates that they don't announce, and everybody's freaking out in the SEO industry, wondering what's going on. And then sometimes they announce them, and it's typically nothing.
Sure.
So it is really difficult. I mean, there there are websites that keep track of those particular updates, and there's a lot of them. But I try not to focus on them too much. For the simple fact, I mean, once you have the direction, once you understand the direction that Google is headed, you can kind of follow them and kind of give them what they want, right? You know that they want to reward authorities on a subject matter.
So that sounds like that authority on a subject matter seems to be like a major algorithm update that, at least, maybe it's the first time you've even heard of SEO. If you're joining us today, maybe it's something, you've been focusing on, complete, backlinking or other areas in SEO that you thought, but now, what Chris is saying, that, hey, that authority in your content is clearly one of the drivers or one of those levers that, Google's looking for. So Chris, not to put you on the spot, but if you could think of, some sort of example around authority, maybe it's, talk about a specific, whether it's a blog post or then, I guess, what is that driving that authority that our law firms could take away from today for things that they can, be more authoritative on?
Okay. Yeah. I'll try to explain it so that you could, if you wanted to do it yourself, you could, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're thinking of a topic, the best thing is typically I use Ahrefs. A lot of us in the industry do. That's ahrefs.com if anybody's interested. But the reason we use them is because they're the ones that are purchasing the internet service provider data. And if you were to do it, one shot at a time, if you were to ask for a bunch of data, it would be tens of thousands of dollars. But strewn out across thousands of users, it's pretty affordable, right? And so what they're gathering is actual searches that people are performing consistently, right? So you have those searches. So type in an idea in Ahrefs, type in an idea in Google, and then put it in Ahrefs and see, okay, what are people actually searching around that topic, right?
Interesting.
And if you can find out what they're actually searching and what kind of search volume. The important thing is search volume here, that you're not chasing something that is minuscule or doesn't matter, because if it's not on Google's radar, Google's algorithm is fantastic, but it's far from perfect right now. Okay. And so you kind of have to feed them a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. They're a little slow. I mean, it's a computer, right? So they're doing fantastic things. They're further than I ever thought they would be at this point in time, but that's thankful to RankBrain. We can talk about that later, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, do that search, plop that in Google. Okay. And then see, okay, what results are showing up on that particular page.
Sure.
Google's giving you the answer right there. They're showing you the top few results, right? They're showing you the type of content that they like.
Right.
And if that's happens to be, and you could take the top 10, for example, right? And
sure.
if you're an attorney and you're going after a particular term, you would look at other attorney websites, not necessarily like, these folks with lists of attorneys on them, but other attorney websites that Google's rewarding, and see, okay, how can I compete with that piece of content, right? Because the goal is to make yourself the authority in that space. And if you can write a better piece, if you can put out a better piece, which typically it's pretty darn easy to do, right? I mean, I wouldn't say easy, but it's right there in front of you, right? It's going to take some work. It's going to take, I don't know how efficient you are at writing, but it's hard, right? For me, I can put out a piece, but it takes me a long, long time to do it. Some people are much more efficient, right? But you have the example there.
Right.
Take that, reverse engineer it, and boom. And then there you are providing Google with what they want,
right?
Because they're already showing you,
right?
It's no secret.
Yeah,
that's part of it.
I was gonna say it's they're giving you the blueprint, right? You run the search, the things that you want to pop up for, and boom, you have the blueprint.
You have the blueprint. So if you, for example, you see a lot of law firms hire SEO companies, and it's like, okay. and they say, we're going to produce, 2 articles a month or 4 articles a month or 8 articles, whatever it is, and they're all going to be 800 words. Well, okay, that doesn't make any sense, right? Because if I go to Google and I'm looking at this search term, right, and then I'm analyzing, I'm like, oh, the first few pages are like 2,500 words, in-depth pieces that are providing a ton of value.
Sure.
800 words is not even. It's not going to do you any good. It's actually going to negatively impact your website, believe it or not.
Wow.
And
so there's a risk. There is a risk. I mean, when you got to be very strategic and know what you're doing here, because you could actually be causing a detriment when you think you're going to be improving your optimization.
Yes. And a lot of folks wasting a lot of money because they're on some kind of plan like that where they're not really paying super close attention. They're like, I got a firm to run, I don't want to mess with the SEO. These guys are the pros, right?
Right.
But yeah, it happens all the time. And if you're pumping out a bunch of, 800 word posts and your competition's got a 2,500 word piece that's real in depth and provides tons of value, who's the authority on that?
Sure.
Right. And you are an extension of your website.
Of course. Branding has never been more important than it is today.
You're an extension of your website. So you're an extension of that content. So if it falls dead short, even if somebody were to find you, even if you were to show up, what good does it do you?
Right. There you have it. The blueprint's right there. For all it really is. And I think I don't mean to oversimplify it, Chris, because a lot of the things and the research and the analysis that you've done is obviously, incredible. But Chris, dropping some great tips here for our audience, for everyone out there. Please feel free to drop those questions in the comment section wherever you're listening to us today. Would love to get some real-time questions over to Chris. I mean, I certainly got a handful of other things that I want to get through, but definitely want to hear directly from you guys as well. And while we're waiting for a couple of questions to come through, I had one kind of that we were discussing, Chris, before we jumped on the call that I think kind of goes well with what you were just explaining about. There's all this other content out there. There's all these other firms that have been working for, 10 years on their SEO and writing, blog posts and, really being authoritative. But, I think you talked about that. It's a misconception, actually, that I'm too late to the game. Can you kind of get into that and what you've seen with your experience as somebody who's never even done SEO today?
Yeah. And I think a lot of folks think that, right? They think, okay, I'm late to the game. Like, what's the point in even looking at SEO as an option? Like search, that was 10 years ago, right? Those people that are doing well, I know who they are. They're killing it. I'll never pass them, right? Mm-hmm. Well, it's so much. So we did a little bit of research. We did a 15 market analysis across the United States. And we looked at the top 5 highest search volume websites for each particular market and analyzed them for things like external link profiles, content quality, and then internal linking, right? We analyzed them all. And the surprising thing to me was that 97%. So that's a pretty big number. Which way do you think it's going to be? We're actually deficient, like 97%. Even the guys that were doing it well, 97% of the campaigns were technically deficient.
Wow.
Meaning, like there was a couple that got it right.
Sure. There's a lot of opportunity out there.
There is a ton of opportunity out there right now. And we talked about if you've been on an SEO plan for years and years and years, which I see a lot, mm-hmm. You go to the blog and there's every year listed, every month listed, like for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But it's all like, those 800 word blog posts, right? But if you're not providing value, what Google perceives as value, which may not be correct either way, because we talked about them being a little deficient as well. But
sure,
you have to feed the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
But if all those pages are deficient, then essentially Google is not going to want to reward your website at all. and they're actually, it's almost like you have a brick on top of your head, right? And so you can't get up. If you've ever taken the lifeguard course, right? They make you swim with a brick, or so it's a very similar thing, right? You're not the authority, and Google's going to ignore you. And you may have 400 pages of content. Google could care less.
Wow.
And I see it more often than not.
Well, I was going to say, it clearly gets you fired up, because as I asked that question, it looked like you were about to get out of your chair and
yeah, I am. It kind of fires me up a bit. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I mean, I think that's for our audience here, whether you guys are, deep in SEO with SEO plans, or, have never even heard of SEO, there's certainly an answer out there for everybody. And I think this is a nice segue into, maybe the firms that are really monitoring their SEO today. And if you notice a sudden drop in those given search rankings, is it always the algorithm, right? Because you just talked about, Chris, a little bit how the Google itself can be deficient, right? So yeah. I guess talk to me about sudden drops, and is there always going to be a way for the firm to determine maybe why they saw that decline?
For themselves, maybe not, but if you talk to somebody, possibly, sure. Right? I mean, it's typically going to be some kind of algorithm switch, and then typically you'll see it go right back. Right. It's just like maybe they're messing with something, toying with something, what have you. But if there is something that's super deficient on your site and they make a major update and stick with it, then that's a problem.
Okay. And I think this is actually we got a great question here from the audience as well. John Robinson had asked, what if you have a lot of existing content? How do you recommend fixing that?
That's a tough one, right? So, and it's a little bit of a process.
Sure.
So the best thing to do, it's slow, but I can explain it to you.
Sure,
right?
Please.
The best thing to do, John, is go through that content and start with one blog post, right? And what is that piece trying to rank for? Look at that, put it in. And you'll be able to tell what it's trying to rank for typically, right? It should be the title, and it should be in the, probably the H1, at least those keywords in there. And then put that into Hrefs and see what kind of search volume is around that, right? And see if it even makes sense first, because maybe it doesn't, or maybe it does. And then put that same search into Google, and then again, take those top results and just look them. It's a slow process, John. I'm not going to lie. But that's what you really have to do, because you want to, and if it's something that's not even close, look, we prune websites all the time. We can kill half of a website and increase rankings. Like, that's a thing that commonly happens nowadays, just because Google is, they want you to be the authority. So basically, like that brick on top of the head analogy again, it's real. It's real. And so, yeah, I hope I answered your question, John. It's basically one at a time, really. And, and I mean, you can look in your Google Webmaster Tools to see if that particular post or article, whatever, is actually showing up in any searches. That's a quick way to do it as well. And then kind of prune with the three-way approach.
Yeah, great question there, John. Thanks so much for that. Chris, great answer as always. And I think you mentioned two things there that lead into one of my next questions about what should we be doing to improve search visibility? And I think John's question answers one of them, right? Go back and look at your existing content and see how you can, if it's possible to fix it. If not, right, that's kind of the second recommendation of, we want to probably, get rid or prune, as you so politely said, our website. So what are some other ways that we can optimize or improve search?
I mean, you want to be in all the places your competitors are, of course. That's fantastic. But I mean, really, like, and it goes back to that authority thing. And I pound it because it's so true. If if you want to be looked at, when you go into the courtroom, you want to be looking sharp, right? You best foot forward. You got a big case. Maybe you bought a new Armani, right? You're going in, you're shining, you're looking fantastic. Well, your website should be the same, right? Your website goes forward, and you need to be publishing the type of content that is super in-depth and super valuable.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to be a authority on the subject across the spectrum. And if you can do that, it's a real simple formula. I mean, I don't want to make it seem too simple, because there's a lot that goes in the back end, right?
Of course.
But it's a real simple formula, super high, every page a resource. That's the thing we say around here. It's every page a resource. And if you can accomplish that, you're going to win. I mean, and it may seem like it's taking forever, right? It may seem, because it's a long slog, right? Especially if somebody else has been producing pretty high quality content that you're competing against, and they've got 100, 200 pages. I mean, it's going to take you a while to catch up. Let's be honest. But if you do that, if you take that high quality content approach, and you, like we talked about before, make sure there's search volume around that particular term, okay? And then put it into Google and see what Google is rewarding, and you write on that, you're good. And then you do the same thing the next go.
Hey, you guys heard it here first. Again, there's a lot of intricacies, with what we do here with SEO, but there's certainly, ways that we can simplify and really think about it in a strategic fashion. So, audience, got one more question on my end for Chris, but want to, let you guys know to make sure to drop your questions in if you have anything else here before we wrap, this great conversation today. But, Chris, I ask you to put your thinking cap on and tell us, what do you predict? What changes or trends do you see on the horizon? And with those said trends, how do you think marketers can get ahead and stay out in front of their competitions?
The trend is going to be that Google is actually going to become, their AI is going to become possibly real AI down in the future. I mean, a lot of people describe it as real AI. The natural language processing algorithm they're using, I think, is still pretty simple. Mm-hmm. They've talked about bringing snippets in, and they've talked about ranking pages using those snippets and things like that. But I think that they're just going to drill down further and further into the content itself. And they're going to be looking to make sure that it's, they want to reward thorough, high value content. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing that, then that's what they're going for. Sure. That really is what they're going for. They're trying to eliminate, traditional SEO, but SEO a lot of times has been like links and links and links and links, right? Everybody talks about links, and those are super important still today. It's very different than it used to be.
Sure.
So it's still content and links though, and rank brain. So those are the three things that you really have to pay attention to. And rank brain is basically, so if you want me to explain that to you, I can.
Please.
So rank brain, so they have people that judge their results, humans that say, okay, Google says, we're going to give you this result and you judge it, right? You judge result 1 through 10 and give it a score, right? And are we doing a good job? And what if this is not a good result? Why shouldn't it be there? And then what they've done, they used to do it, and it was just quality raters, right? And they would do it. The engineers would sit back and they'd make the updates to the algorithm. Well, now that is automated via rank brain. Yeah. And so that's the reason why Google has sped things up so quickly over the last few years, because everything's just so much faster,
Mhm.
right? And so they're looking at those things behind the scene. They're saying, okay, what makes that a quality page? Okay, they've got this, check.
Right.
And that has sped things up quite a bit. And let's see, content and links, right?
Mhm.
The quality content, like we talked about, and links. A lot of people. So if you're building links with your SEO provider, and remember that relevancy is going to be important.
Sure.
It's the most important thing, and relevancy, meaning like title tag, H1,
Sure.
things like that. The content that references you off of your website is going to be just as important, right? I'm trying to think of other things that I see that are oftentimes a little bit messy
Mhm.
offsite, and there's a lot of it. Making sure your content is getting posted to a real website. That's good. That's good.
Does that happen? I mean, surprisingly, I feel like you're just going to say surprisingly that does happen more often than you would think.
It happens very often.
Really?
Still, yeah. Well, the thing is, it's a lot easier to do that, right?
Sure.
You can create a bunch of websites, and
Yeah.
then you can link them all back to yourself or whatever, and that's fine. Whatever, if you want to do that, it's great.
Right.
But if you're wanting to build, something like we're talking about here, super high quality,
Yeah.
then you're wanting to get links from real websites, and
Right.
that's important. Making sure that those websites actually are ranking for keywords of their own, right?
Sure.
And actually have some kind of traffic. That's
Sure.
typically pretty important.
Excellent. I mean, speaking of content, we got some amazing content here on this Liticast here today. One thing I always try to do on each one of these episodes, Chris, is just what was Blake's one takeaway? Again, I know we have all these legal marketers out here and these thought leaders, which I'm sure they took away. They had their notes going and all that good stuff. But I think one thing that really resonated with me today, when you talked about the art methodology, just the being authoritative with your content. And I think like you brought that up in multiple different aspects, and really being that sound thought leader that Google can. I know trust is the T, but I think being authoritative is going to lead to that trust as well. So you mentioned that a couple of times, and I just think like that was my one takeaway, and I'm sure the audience, was like, Blake, that was one of the most basic things from today. But I really think that a lot of people can start to come out with content that really makes them those thought leaders, because they are thought leaders, right? All of everybody that's listening in today has something important to say, that's why they are in business, right? And they ultimately want to provide the best customer service possible. And how can we do that? Well, we need to take our brand and be trustworthy. And we can certainly do that across the web as well as we're doing that for our clients.
Right, exactly. Remember that you are your website, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So Chris, before I wrap things up, I know you wanted to make a quick announcement for all of our listeners today. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to you before I wrap up.
Yeah. If you guys are interested, as part of this, we figured why not give away some SEO training for free. So if you guys want to go to attorneyseotraining.com/Liticast, attorneyseotraining.com/Liticast, and just sign up. No charge, right? So if you got some extra time right now, it's a fantastic time to be digging in and learning a little bit about SEO. And I hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions, you can hit me up via email or via LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the best, right?
LinkedIn is the best. It sure is. And if I'm out there, I'm following up with Chris here. I mean, he's offering this awesome free training here. You got the link. We dropped it in all the channels here. Certainly can follow up with the Litify team if you missed this, but definitely don't want to miss out on that excellent training. Even if you're the expert in SEO, it certainly doesn't hurt to brush up, and maybe you can work with Chris on a couple ways or ideas to refine what you're doing already. So never hurts to continue our own education. So before I wrap up, Chris, just a big thank you to you. Really appreciate you jumping on, spending the last 36 minutes with us, sharing that plethora of knowledge that you have. Really enjoyed our conversation today, and I'm certain the audience did as well. So again, thank you to you for joining us today.
Sure. Thanks, Blake. I appreciate it.
Of course. And for our audience, right, just like at the beginning, follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe on YouTube, wherever that little bell icon is, Facebook, as well as our website. Subscribe, opt in, get those push notifications. So whenever we go live with Liticast, you can certainly follow us wherever we're at. I also love to plug this. We do have a Slack community that's starting to grow. It's called LitiQuest. We talk about industry news, marketing trends, right? So this is probably a great opportunity to talk about SEO in our Slack community, job opportunities, and just networking with other firms. If you haven't got in there yet, a great plug for that, to be able to get in there, converse with a lot of the thought leaders across the industry. Lastly, you'll be able to find this recording up on our website, litify.com/Liticast. And with that, we are wrapping up another great edition of Liticast. A big thank you again to my co-host today, Chris, and we will see you guys next time with Liticast. Take care, everybody.